All right. I I'm thinking this is live. I'm a little bit early, but as our really good friend Grace Torres says, if you're not early, you're late. So we are live, and I want to thank all of you for joining us here. My name is Kaala Souza, and I work with the Workforce Development Council here in Hawaii, and we've been doing some really interesting projects, working on an initiative to upskill Hawaii's workforce to get them ready to get all of us ready for the future of work. And so I've been talking in that capacity to fascinating people with fascinating ideas over the last 12 months, and have said, hey, can we just get some of those people onto this live stream so we can share some of these ideas with other people, get our discussions going, start to raise awareness of these concepts and ideas and different ways of thinking. And that's where we are now. So if you're here live, thank you so much for being here, joining with us. There's a couple of things to know. If you're on YouTube, I can track your comments and questions mostly. And if you're also on YouTube, please like and share because it helps us to do something to the algorithm with YouTube. I don't know what that means, but it helps get the word out to more people. If you're watching on any of the other platforms here, social media, I'm trying to track them, but it's like chewing gum, talking, walking at the same time. And so I may get there a little bit late, but we have some fantastic things going on. Before I do, I wanted to say that we have just started offering basic computer skills here throughout the state. The University of Hawaii Community Colleges are providing instructors and locations at all of their campuses. The libraries are going to be coming online pretty soon too. Those are free basic computer skills. I have a link in the description here at the bottom. Please, if you're watching this, you're probably already too advanced, but please share this link and the registration on that website with people that you know who may benefit from this. And so that's fantastic stuff going on. In the last couple of weeks, we've talked to super cool people, and the list is is still growing and growing. Today, we have one of the most fascinating thinkers, visionaries. I'm going to use the word leaders here in our state that's going on. I'm going to introduce them in just a second. But before I do, we have a couple coming up as well. Teresa Sladek from North Star in Minnesota, who is a national digital literacy company organization. We're going to be talking to them tomorrow. Next week is Jason Chang. He's the president of Queens Healthcare, talking about the future of work in healthcare. And I probably should have led with this. Shout out to my wife, Lisa Souza, who is actually working right now. But it was our anniversary yesterday, and happy anniversary to you. I didn't do any other social media things, but happy anniversary, 30 years for us. It's a huge thing. And it started me thinking about the next 30 years. And then coincidentally, I had a work anniversary that some of you on LinkedIn had said, hey, congratulations, Kaala. But that's 12 months working on this project to upskill Hawaii and our workforce with the Workforce Development Council. So all kinds of birthdays going on, and that's a perfect lead-in for this guest that we're going to be having today. Today, we're talking to Glenn Wakai. He's a senator here in Hawaii, and he is legit. I've talked to so many people, not me talking a lot, which is true, but I've talked to so many people around our state and around the country. And I always ask him, hey, what are you thinking about the future of Hawaii here, of work here, of our economy? And there's very few that give me what I consider an alternative picture of the future. And by that, I mean, we're talking about people who are going to be visionaries. That's what I consider a vision. That's the definition of leadership to me, is somebody who has a vision, and vision is an alternative picture of the future. So we have Glenn Wakai on today. And let me just share this bio with you guys today. Started public service in 2002 when he was elected to the State House of Representatives, moved to the Senate in 2010. Currently the chairman of the Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism Committee. So before that, though, Glenn was 11 years in television news, and I totally forgot about that. His reporting career began in Guam, later moved to Saipan to build this TV station from scratch, and came back to Hawaii to become a reporter for KHON Fox TV 2 News and KHNL News 8. And this is kind of the important things for people. They want to know like where you graduated from. I don't have your high school here, but I have to check a little bit later, Glenn. Graduated from University of Southern California, degrees in journalism, sociology, business administration as well. So he's all around intelligent, super smart guy. And I want to welcome to our live stream here, Glenn Wakai. What's up? Hello. Let me get all those things there. What? You're looking good, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that I'm legit. That's a good one.
Yeah,
You valid. validating my existence. Thank you, Kaala. And happy anniversary.
Oh,
30
thank
years. I
you.
give your wife a lot of credit.
Yeah, oh no, yeah, the wife for sure. Somebody's like, what is the secret of like a long marriage? I'm a patient wife, kind wife, super like generous wife. It's not me.
Well, you bring a lot of energy to the relationship, I'm sure. So she's lucky as well.
Oh man, thanks. I'm not sure how many people call you legit, but I'm gonna lead with that. So we're super happy to have you on here. Like I spoke with you like several times over the last, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, 15 months. I started talking to a year and a half ago, talking about Workforce Development Council and workforce in general and some of your ideas. And most recently, you were definitely a strong supporter for our basic computer skills, digital literacy skills with Representative Case to get some funding for that. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You were also at one of those classes, the very, very first one that we started. You showed up over there. So what did you think when you first went there?
I thought it was fantastic that you started in Salt Lake Library. And when I went there, I was just kind of amazed that they were keiki to kupuna. And they all had just basic computer skills. And you totally upskilled them for embracing the digital technology world of today. And for the kupuna, maybe not so much a workforce development issue, but they got to get online to get a vaccine. They got to get online to register their car or get their state ID or whatever. That was super helpful to them. So it's more than just workforce. It's just upskilling our entire community. And we really appreciate your expertise, time, and knowledge, Kaala.
We're so grateful to have you there. And I know that this is your home turf, right? You from Salt Lake area? Is that right?
That's right. That's where I am right now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, represent. Wait, where did you go to high school at? I know I got the whole college thing, but where did you go to high school? I just got to ask.
I went to Mid-Pac.
Mid-Pac. Okay, represent. And what year did you grad? I got to ask that too.
1985, in the past century.
What?
But I went to school I went to school at Monolo Elementary and Monolo Middle School, but I wasn't smart enough to go to Monolo High School, so I went to Mid-Pac.
Oh, jeez. I'm also a 1985 graduate, which means that you are in the prime of your life right now. This is it.
Is that a nice way of saying I'm old? Yes, I'm old.
Only if I'm old too, and my back and my knees make me feel like that. So thank you very much. You're in the prime of your life, because that's what my kids tell me too. Dad, you're in the prime of your life, and can we have the car keys? You got some cash.
I thought I was in the prime of my life when I was in college, but the prime is I'm still waiting for my prime.
Yeah, no. This is it right here. So, again, super, super happy to have you on here. And, I have a whole bunch of questions that I've been thinking about, but way back, like again, over a year ago when we were first talking, when I first met you, I remember sitting in your office and you were talking about some of the things, and this may be early even in our conversation, but you had like three like projects that you were working on, just really, really big, that I want to get to and have you explain that, because I forgot. There's like, they all kind of not rhyme, but they start with the same letter, and I want to get to that. But then I also
economic plan.
Thank you.
I can explain that to you later.
Thank you. I want the whole thing, because what we're looking at here now is this. We got hammered, and we're not the only place to get hammered, but we got this like taken down by COVID-19. I've been saying, like, when a butterfly flaps its wings, our economy is so fragile and so vulnerable that we just we trip and stumble. And so when something like COVID-19 happens, or anything that's going to just disrupt the world, we're going down. And so I'm really interested in talking to you about that, and in particular because I have this digital focus. What you think about where Hawaii is digitally and in terms of technology, and maybe we can just start there, because I'm like a foreigner to the legislature. So the whole government process, I didn't pay attention in school. So this one I was paying attention because I had some interest, vested interest. But can you just kind of give me like one thing that maybe the legislature, you guys were working on to help us with in terms of technology? I don't know, broadband. What did you guys do this last year?
Yep. Well, I didn't pay attention to civics class when I was in elementary school either, Kaala, but now I opened my eyes and I saw how all the sausage otherwise known as laws, are made. And this past legislative session in January, things were looking really, really terrible. We're looking at a $1.4 billion puka in our state budget. We didn't know if the feds were going to save us. Thank God they saved us with $1.6 billion in federal assistance. So we plugged the puka and actually had some extra money for broadband deployment. And what we did was we put in $10 million for cable landing sites, right? As we talk now, it's based on a broadband infrastructure, but it has to come here, right? It's not like it gurgles out of the ground. So we are having money devoted to building more infrastructure so that as these trans-Pacific cables crisscross the Pacific, they will be landing here in Hawaii and they can just kind of plug and play. So it plugs in. But once we plug in, then what? It can't just be a cable sitting off our shores. It has to come to our house. So we also created a grant program for broadband deployment so that the Spectrums, the Hawaiian telecoms of the world can leverage some of their money with our money, and then we can take it to underserved areas in the urban core and maybe particularly in our rural areas, right? Our friends on Molokai, our friends who live in rural Big Island and Kauai and elsewhere. So we have a grant program to really take the cable landings and bring broadband into our homes. And another important bill that we passed this year was to establish a broadband office. So up until this year, the broadband office was one guy, this guy Bert Lum. He was a personnel count on the state books, and that was it. We really didn't have statute. We didn't have a mission, and now we have that. It shows that the state really is focused on broadband and have put it into
Mhm.
law. So we actually came away with some really good framework for broadband deployment as well as big money for
Yeah,
broadband deployment.
I like that. And Bert was on this live stream last week or the week before and talking all kinds of technical stuff that I couldn't follow. Even you talk about landing things, fiber optic cables. All I know is that without them, we are completely cut off. Like if my internet goes down in my house, my wife, who is a nurse practitioner and sees all of her patients online, my son, who is at West Oahu in his last semester today, my other son and his fiance both have separate businesses all online. We're done. Like if we get cut off, like in our house. So if our state, something happens, there's no redundancy, we're just done on this. And so I really appreciate your effort. Are we where we're supposed to be, or is there something else that we need to add on to make sure that we are protecting that internet connectivity, the broadband connectivity? We're getting faster. Where are we? Are we there yet? Dad, are we there yet?
Yeah, I think we have pretty good broadband infrastructure, but it's old broadband infrastructure. It's kind of like a car, right? You buy it new, and eventually the thing is going to putter out, or you got to change the oil immediately, or you got to fix a carburetor or whatever is in the vehicle. So we're kind of at that stage where we have a good car. It served us well, but we got to make sure that we maintain it. And a good case in point as to how good our broadband is that some of your viewers might know that the University of Hawaii just last week hosted a esports
Yes.
event. It's called Overwatch, right? And Overwatch came here because our broadband is good. This thing called latency, right? How much time does it take for me to type in something here, go to L and come back? That's called latency. They were able to bring that down to the point where they can have esports gaming, so that there were there were teams from the US mainland here in Hawaii, and they were challenging teams in Japan. But we couldn't have had that set up last week if our broadband was junk. So we actually have pretty good broadband. And what I just mentioned earlier was about making sure that we have good broadband well into the future, well past your children graduating from grad school and their grandchildren going to grad school.
Thank you very much. And I thank you for bringing up my children. Like this whole, we had dinner last night. They made a little party for us. It was amazing. They had balloons and it was special. Like kids are old, and it started me thinking though. They're saying, hey, what did it seem like it was fast? 30 years. Did it seem like a long time? But it started me thinking about the next 30 years and what they're going to be living in, what their jobs, what their futures are going to be like. And I'm kind of concerned. The Hawaiian way, the Hawaiian culture. You think about actions and consequences, and you think about them generationally. So you think about how that's not just going to affect me, but how it's going to affect them and their children. And that makes me feel good that there is some people thinking about the generations in the future. I like it.
Yeah, and I love the work that you're doing as well because you're thinking about how are we going to provide the skill set to that future generation. And we know that currently our economy is really tied to tourism, but I don't know if that's going to be the cash cow of our future. We need to figure out how we can reskill our friends and neighbors for that new paradigm shift in economic development globally.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one too. When you think about tourism, you bring that up. Whenever like I went out, I was interviewing everybody about the future of work or what Hawaii's economy could look like or should look like. Everybody said diversification, and everybody brought up tourism and our over dependency on tourism. But there was really no alternatives. Like everybody's thinking like, what do we pivot to away from tourism? And I'm just not sure if it's going to be something like going from sandalwood to whaling to tourism to XYZ ABC, and this is why I'm excited to talk to you because again, I use the word leadership and vision as like synonymous. If you're a visionary, you're a leader, you have a picture of the future. And I have not got a lot of that. And even if the picture that you have or other people have is different from mine, at least you have a vision. Let me tell me what it is. And so I like you because you have a vision and you have a different way of thinking about this. Let me throw the word diversification out for you and just respond to that. When you think about diversification, when you hear it from people, what goes through your mind? What's your response to that?
We have to stop talking about the price of paradise. We look at our isolation as a detriment. And if we kind of just shift that mindset into how is our location to our strategic advantage, then we open up opportunities. And so, going back to your question, we know and do tourism well, right? We can talk about diversification all we want, but we're going to have to go back to tourism and then establish that and then talk about other diversifications of the economy. So, with regard to tourism and how is tourism going to leverage technology? I mean, we saw there was a Civil Beat article a couple of days ago which says that as tourism rebounds, 20,000 people, particularly in the hotel industry, are not going to have jobs to go back to because technology is kind of replacing them, right? Reservation system,
Yep.
even keys. You don't have to go to the front desk, right? You can just get your key and beep right there on the door and drop your bags and get to the pool. And technology is changing tourism. And are we going to be just left behind on that, or should we be in figure out how Hawaii can be the leader in that area? So, for example, with regard to tourism and its rebound, we know that local resident satisfaction with tourism is at an all-time low, right? Because the tourists are in our neighborhoods, going into places they really shouldn't be going into. So, one area where we should really mesh tourism and technology is on a statewide park reservation system. So, I'm in California. I'm coming to my dream vacation here in Hawaii, and I can book my reservation to Diamond Head. Maybe I'll go to Maui. I'll go to Iao Maybe I'll go to Kauai. I'll go to Haena Beach Park, but I can do it all online. And the state will then know how many people, and maybe most importantly, we can monetize it, right? We're going to charge people for going to these locations. But that's where we should be really thinking about using technology as our friend and helping to enhance tourism. But we're still talking about that. And one thing about me, Kaala, is like I want action. We got to get
You
stuff
too.
done. We cannot continue talking about problems and never solving problems. We're notorious in Hawaii for
Yeah.
doing that. We need action, not more Malama stories.
Yes. So I've got that directed towards me. Something I talk a lot, and I've been in some meetings before where you say, "Hey, show me the action. Show me something." And it's something that you've always been about. So I'm not gonna lie. During the lockdown, if I went to the beach and there's nobody around me, I was pretty happy. Okay, it was. We talk about like what we would want for tourism to come back as. That's there's some benefits, like there's nobody on the road. But this idea of using technology, again, it's right down it's in my alley, it's in my lane. I'm into this kind of stuff. My kids talk about meme stocks with me, and they're all on crypto and trading, that kind of thing. I lost $2 on Doge the other day. I just want a doggy coin, That's all I want. And we should be talking about crypto in Hawaii too, by the way, because I think we need to make it a little bit easier for us to get to that. I couldn't. Can we just back up a little bit? I couldn't get this Doge coin. Have you heard of that? The doggy coin, the Doge.
I'm
So
not very familiar with
okay,
cryptocurrency. You're far
that's
more
okay.
advanced than I am.
So Elon Musk has been pushing this, like almost as a joke, like getting Doge. It's like, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP or something. There's a whole bunch of weird ones. But Elon Musk has been kind of as a joke, this coin that was like Doge, they call it DOGE. It's like a dog. I call it has a picture of a dog on it. So I call it a dog, but it's a Doge coin. And he's been pushing it. So the price went up like 2,000% in the last couple of weeks. So it went up to like 70 cents, because when I was looking at it, I wanted to get it. It was like less than a penny, but I couldn't because Hawaii, whatever it is, we weren't allowed to buy crypto or something. Do you know anything at all about that? Do you know anybody we can talk to make that open that up a little?
Well, the state has been struggling with that issue for probably about 3 years, and it's within the DCCA, Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and particularly their financial division there, that is trying to figure out what their framework is and what are the guardrails and regulatory setup for us in Hawaii to embrace crypto. Because for all of the excitement that you mentioned, from a state perspective, we need to protect the people
That's
of
true.
Hawaii and make right because the Bank of Hawaii is the first Hawaiian banks of the world. There's assets,
Mhm.
there's tangible things that we can leverage in case things go wrong. But with
Yes.
crypto, just poof, right? It's
Yeah,
just smoke.
that's right.
So we got to figure out like how are we going to protect you to make sure that Dodge, Dooge, dog, whatever
That's
it
right.
is,
Thank you.
doesn't take you from your house into the doghouse.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you're good. You're good. And it's true because there's nothing kind of backing it. So Elon Musk is pumping it, and the whole pump and dump thing, and guys on YouTube are doing this. And so I heard there was like a YouTube Doge millionaire. Sorry, a Doge millionaire. Heard about it on YouTube. He put like a whole bunch of credit cards, max out credit cards, $180,000 into this penny crypto, and now he's like really happy. But if it didn't go up, so I get that. I appreciate, and I need somebody to make sure that it doesn't take me for a ride into the doghouse, like you said. And I'm glad that somebody is thinking about it, because it's part of that whole digital revolution thing that we've been referencing with broadband access.
Yep. So smarter people than me are thinking about that, but smarter than people than me have been talking about it for 3 years. So again, there's an example of where the state
Yes.
has to stop talking about stuff and start executing. I mean, let's just take
Thank you.
a little tiny steps. I don't know all the players in the crypto world, but let's just take the first step and not maybe have thresholds, right? X amount of dollars so that you're not spending 100 grand on it. Maybe an individual can drop 5 grand or whatever, right? Just put our toes in the water and then go at it and grow from there. But to just be an outlier and watch this kind of evolve elsewhere with Hawaii not participating is probably not the right approach to take.
Yeah, and my youngest son is 25 years old. And speaking of risk taking, when you're younger than us, Glenn, so when you're young like him, 25, hey, when you go bankrupt, you lost $10,000, but he had an opportunity the other day to buy this other really random coin whose name I cannot pronounce on this live stream. But he came back and said, Dad, I was like $1.50 short because he couldn't fund. It was like some kind of bank error, and he couldn't get it in. It was 15 steps to buy this one cryptocurrency, and it was thousands of dollars that he lost, and I think more than $10,000, like ridiculous. But I like your penchant for action, and hopefully we can push this live stream out and what can I just go back to that the lack of action? What is the problem here? I know we talk a lot, but what is there any barriers that we can identify here in Hawaii that we can remove all the waha and get to some action?
I think our fondness for each other in our community, the bad side of it is that we're risk averse, right? We are hesitant to take chances in Hawaii. But that's what makes Hawaii special, right? That's
Yeah.
what makes us talk about, hey, what high school you went and all of that kind of stuff, right? Because there's that close bond. But that close bond, we're afraid to like piss off people, right? And like do things that might harm others, which is I don't know.
Yeah.
There has to be a delicate balance because we don't want to be just like Wall Street, where we just are cutthroat and we just going to sell our neighbor's house if we can. Uh, but by the same token, we can't continue to be steady as she goes and watch the world embrace crypto and other just uh, platform changers out there and not participate. So somehow we got to find that balance.
I appreciate you bringing that up too, because Hawaii is separate and special in the way that we think and act, and I don't want to lose that. And so I kind of like this reset. Hanamo Bay was really happy with not a gazillion tourists coming, but it still affects our economy. And like you said, we know tourism, and stick to the knitting. I think Tom Peters used to say years and years ago, and I like the idea of getting back into tourism and using that as a way to get ourselves, back standing up at least a little bit. But my concern is that this quick recovery, in the tourism industry is going to be a demotivator because when there's, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We need to do something else. Then everybody's open. And then once tourism comes back in, we put our feet back up. We got to, back on the couch because we have our money coming in. We have our economy doing good. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? The need to get more stable and stabilize, bring back the tourism industry, but then still keep this idea of a vision, an alternative picture of the future. What do we do? How do we make that happen?
I don't know. And to be honest, Paula, we wasted a year because you're exactly right. The time for change is when things are bad, right? When things are good, you don't want to change things. And it's kind of like we opened up the buffet line. We've been offering unhealthy food to our customers. We should have figured out how to redo the menu and offer healthier fare, but too late. We opened up the doors. People are in the buffet line and just eating up. And who are we bringing right now? We're bringing Hawaii is on a discount for the world, and we're bringing in people that in 2019 we didn't want to have come here. So I don't know what it's going to take, Kala, but we wasted a year of opportunity, and you're absolutely right. I mean, hotels are right now figuring out like, okay, what's my rebound action? They're not figuring out like could I have better managed tourism?
Yeah.
In my opinion, the biggest point for tourism locally has been short-term vacation rentals and the fact that tourists are in our neighborhoods being disruptive in our neighborhoods. They're really irritating. You're in my neighbors. But what did the Hawaii Tourism Authority, Hawaii Lodging Association, what did they do in the past year to help, figure out what the guidelines and guardrails should be for the industry? Nothing. And so we lost that opportunity. Now people are busy and they have less incentive and certainly less time to go and figure that out. So I don't know, Kala. I wish I had the answer to your
I
question
was
as to
hoping,
what is it
but I
gonna take.
appreciate you being honest with me. Saying I love the I don't know, but I also like when you say that, hey, we lost an opportunity here, we lost a chance, but I don't want to think that we have lost it forever. There's still people who are looking at alternatives, different possibilities. And I'm just not sure if we're going to have that momentum, like you said, when everybody's all comfortable and we're all cruising, or we're super busy because now we're working again, and we're working in a job that to me feels, I don't know if this is offensive, but it feels like we're back on the plantation, like we're in the sugar again. We're going to be working in this job or this job. They're not high paying jobs, and you have to work 50 jobs, or you have somebody in your house, 50 people in your house to be able to pay the bills. And that just doesn't work for me. And so even my big thing in pushing digital literacy, digital competencies, talk about cryptocurrency. So my son first helped me with this a couple years back when he was starting his Amazon business, and he came back and told me we were skateboarding, and he says, "Dad, I made $80 while we were out skateboarding." And I said, I looked at my phone and I said, I got 8 emails and I made no money. And it just helped me to think a little bit differently about how people can make money in this day and age. So when we think about our workforce and the kind of jobs that we have, what are you thinking would be the best jobs, or the best industries? What should we be looking at as Hawaii for our workforce so we don't have to work 50 jobs?
Yeah, well, I'm a believer in one good quality job. And there's so much political capital this year, last year, and in years ahead talking about the minimum wage increase. And keep in mind that is for the bottom 5% of our employees. in my humble opinion, we should be talking about the other end of the spectrum. How are we going to create quality jobs, and not spend so much time on whether $12 is better than $15 is better than $17? That is really not going to move the needle and do what, as you mentioned, a service for the state in terms of people having a better quality of life. So it's kind of in that vein. I'm really a big fan on looking at strengths, not always focusing on our weaknesses, and somehow all of a sudden I'm going to change my weakness into a strength. Like, forget that, right? I'm only 5'4". No matter how much I want to be playing in the NBA, I'm not going to be 6 feet tall, and so I better put away that dream of playing in the NBA and figure out where are my skill sets. So it's in that kind of mindset that I look at technology, right? Every place on the planet is trying to
Yep.
embrace technology. And so we can't be all things to all technologists. We're not going to be the biomedical capital of the world. We're not going to be the software development capital of the world. There's no location advantage for that. But I can tell you that there are three areas that I believe where Hawaii should and could be global leaders. I call it the triple A economic plan. One is aquaculture, the other is alternative energy, and the third is aerospace. And I'll briefly talk about each of these three areas. Alternative energy. We already know that Hawaii has the 100% renewable mandate by 2045, and we're on Oahu, 30% of the way there, right? We have wind, we have solar. On our neighbor islands, we have geothermal, we have volcanoes, we have hydro on Kauai. So we have all kinds of really cool inputs to help Hawaii lead that global effort in becoming 100% renewable. The other A is aquaculture. It really bothers me that we import 70%, 70% of the fish we consume in Hawaii. Now, wrap your brains around how ridiculous that statistic is. I mean, they're not importing cows into Nebraska, but we're importing fish into Hawaii. We should be a net exporter of fish. But part of our problem there is we talk so much about food sustainability with the mindset of terrestrial, from our historical days of plantation, terrestrial agriculture. But we know that now we have conflicts with housing, we have economic development, we want uh, conservation land. All of that comes into conflict with basket. And I really think that the Department of Agriculture should devote more people there. There are about 200 or so employees at the Department of Agriculture. Two of them focus on aquaculture. There's a misalignment there. We really should be staffing up the aquaculture side of things and providing food sustainability and export opportunities for the state of Hawaii. And the third A is aerospace. And this one is a little bit more controversial. Obviously, we know we have the best set of telescopes on the planet on Mauna Kea, but it's more than TMT. Hawaii, because of our close proximity to the equator, closest than any other state in America, has a great opportunity to launch small satellites into space. You and I know that mobility is the future, right? It's not going to be you and I tethered to a desk and getting our Ethernet stuck into our laptop. We want to walk around and go to Lanikai Beach and bask in the sun and go check emails and watch a movie on YouTube. But we can own that space because we can launch satellites into orbit, and we're not talking about the Cape Canaveral, vertical launch, 90% fuel, and then see a plume of smoke. We can have it on the underbelly of a plane that takes off from Kona, and then you jettison off the space, or excuse me, the satellite. So the satellites of today are not grandpa's satellites of Apollo and NASA of the past. They're different, and they're being led by private entities, right? Elon
Yep.
Musk and is I can't remember his space agency, but Google Galactic. There's Virgin Galactic. The private sector really has taken over from NASA as the purveyors into orbit. And keep in mind, like, what was it, 3 months ago? Man's greatest achievement 3 months ago was to send a rover to Mars. That is phenomenal. And this might sound like I'm a space cadet, but one day man is going to colonize the moon, and maybe one day man will live on Mars. And if and when that day comes, we should be preparing for that day on the Big Island with its lunar-like surface. So Hawaii has a great role to play in economic development for aerospace, as well as solving man's greatest
Yeah.
questions about the universe.
Yeah.
So in those three areas, I think Hawaii really should be and can be global leaders in those areas. But we got to stay focused, got to have a plan, and we got to execute.
Got to act. So
Got to act.
Alan Hayashi made a comment on YouTube, and he says, "Mahalo for your vision for Hawaii and continuing to support technology and our students." He's agreed we need action. That's what he says. So, yeah, 100% shout out to you, Alan, for that one. And I remember that it was these alliterative three things, and so I appreciate you doing that. But I also want to start with where you started, the idea of working from our strengths, a position of strengths. Now discover your strengths, book a couple years back, and work from them. And I kind of forget, because people say, Hawaii, you guys have these unique things. And in marketing, we always talk about the USP, or the unique selling point. And obviously we have ocean. And people think about tourism, but you're talking about fish, going back into that. I'm tripping that there's 70% of our fish is did you say 70 brought in?
70%, yep, brought in.
That's I don't understand that. How did we get to that point?
We love fish. We just don't like eating our own fish.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. And for the record, we try fishing here on Oahu, and we don't catch, but there's a couple of secret spots that I have, but I still have plenty of fish going on, and that works for me. But this other thing that you're looking at, the satellites, I'm kind of tripping on. I heard Elon Musk was saying he's going to try and send people to Mars in by 2025 or something, SpaceX, right? Like people. And I thought this was kind of wild, but then we're living in the Jetsons right now. You and I talking, this is like the Jetsons, the flying cars. I saw some prototypes in Florida where they're going to be running it like Uber or Lyft. You can call this flying car, go from here to there, and they're prototyping it out. So, Elon Musk, you got to be crazy to do those kind of things and to move all of us to Mars. So Hawaii has a chance, you're saying, because of these strengths. What do we need to do for the fish stuff? What do we need to make happen for that? What's the actions that we need to take?
We need to, I think first, the easiest is to start staffing up in the Department of Agriculture, because, especially you look at the ancient, and this ties well with our Hawaiian traditions, right? The fish ponds, we've kind of abandoned the fish ponds in Hawaii, but take the fish ponds a step further, where we have geo-positioned uh, outdoors cages that are floating around and growing kampachi, and sorry, I don't know the fish world, but a variety of different fish that are out there. So to me, it dovetails perfectly into what Hawaiians were all about in sustainability, but take the fish pond and take it into the ocean. So we just need the Department of Agriculture to see that aquaculture is part of their mission, staff up there. And of course, like anything else, we need money, right? Grants, or otherwise, to kind of chum the waters. And we eventually need to invest in a fish processing facility, right? Because it's one thing to just catch it and then you brine it and you freeze it, but maybe there's the real economic potential is in the processing of the fish, not just putting it in a tuna can or whatever, but turning it into, omega whatever oils that come from fish, put
Right.
it on your face, put it in your body, whatever can be utilized from that. So we have to think about that as well. What kind of fish processing plant can we establish here in the States to really capitalize on the value of marine fish crustacean ogo industry in Hawaii?
Right. I like that a lot. And just for the record, I do the fish oil, like the omega-3s, all the time too. I'm curious what kind of support you have for this idea. Again, because the fact that you have a vision, an alternative picture of the future, is positive to me. But not everybody's going to vibe with that. Not everybody's going to be on that. But do you have a lot of support for this? Or what would be people's, maybe I'll ask the opposite question. What would be people's concern with doing this? It's kind of aquaculture. What would be the pushback?
Same old, same old. There's a lot of people who like terrestrial agriculture that believe that we can grow our way into a better situation. And even, within the agriculture industry, are we growing agriculture for food sustainability or for economic development? Because I hear so much talk about, we should grow what we eat. Well, if that's in fact the case, then Hawaii's going to be covered with rice paddies, right? Everybody eats rice every day.
Yes.
And I'm really of the mindset that we should grow what makes economic sense. If cacao, the basis of chocolate, Kona coffee, vanilla are high value commodities, then yeah, okay, I might not eat all of those things every day, but that's what we should be growing for export opportunities. But even within the idea of the agricultural sector, I don't always agree with those who believe we should eat what we grow. And so we really need the community to just figure out like what is the path that we want to go in, right? Because if we start pouring money into wonbok, cabbage, and pumpkins, then okay, well we need to have a plan, and if that's what we're going to invest in, that's what we're going to invest in. But right now, we really have no clear game plan on food sustainability in this state.
Yeah, and that's a concern for all of us, right? I mean, the COVID-19 brought up this thing. I did some work with the harbors back in the day. Haima, a couple of years ago, our harbors go down, we're in trouble. So everybody talks about food sustainability right around hurricane season as well. But the idea of growing things, I guess terrestrial, when you talk about terrestrial agriculture, I like that term. You're talking about a farm like on land. Is that correct? Terrestrial?
Growing
Okay.
out of the ground.
I'm going to use that term as soon as we're done with this. Go talk to my kids and so let's talk about terrestrial agriculture. I'm going to sound super smart. But we talk about that, and I love the idea of food sustainability. So I have a little aquaponics, a little mini aquaculture set up myself for years. I've killed so many tilapia. Poor guys. I apologize to them, and not on purpose. You're supposed to eat them, right? But my poor fish, they have a terrible aquaponics farmer in me. So I love that idea. The idea of having a competitive, agriculture industry is hard for me to imagine. Do we have a shot? That's why we're not in a plantation economy anymore, right?
Right. So your question is, do we have a shot at growing agriculture?
I mean, is there? Can we be competitive worldwide with how how Hawaii would, whatever product it's going to be?
Yep. Well, I just think going back to my 3 A's, we got to figure out what is it that Hawaii grows that is of great value. And going back to cacao, I mean, we know we grow really great cacao, right? You can't grow cacao in any place else in America because of our tropical environment. We can grow cacao here, and but we don't have a processing facility. So what happens is except for Manoa chocolate, we grow the cacao and then we export it so that the Nestle's, the Ghirardelli's, the Godivas of the world can take advantage of the really full value of our cacao here. I mean, shouldn't we have a discussion about making Hawaii the Willy Wonka of the Pacific and really sell it and create our own global brand out of Hawaii based on the cacao that we grow rather than give it to somebody else so they can go make oodles of money off of our chocolate?
I like it. I thank you for expanding my mind a little bit too, because as you're talking about cacao, which I'm a big fan of chocolate, and the idea that I didn't know this, that we were the only place in the United States that can grow this, because I do have a friend, family on Hawaii Island that grows vanilla. And, I guess there was a big hurricane someplace where vanilla is normally grown, Madagascar. And they were one of the few vanilla places, because we're here in Hawaii, that was able to supply some stuff to the worldwide market. So it was fantastic for them just a couple of years ago. So vanilla chocolate, I see that now. And I think you've expanded my thinking on this. We start talking about diversification again. Are these 3 A's the ways that you think that we can diversify, that we pivot to, or would they be in like supplemental to tourism? How do you look at the economic plan that you're talking about?
Oh, I don't mean to disparage tourism. I think tourism will always be a key element of our economy. Right now, tourism accounts for about 18% of our entire GDP. So I want to see that this pie gets bigger, right? Not that somehow we cut out tourism and we have the same size pie filled with the 3 A's that I just mentioned, but figure out how we're going to grow this pie. So the tourism will always hopefully drive 17 or so billion dollars in economic value, but that 17 billion is now part of a GDP that's 150 billion instead of right now our GDP is about 97 billion in the States. Just grow the pie. So everything I mentioned is an additive, not subtracting from tourism.
Matt, you're expanding my mind here, speaking of pies, because I tend to think of this zero-sum kind of game thing where we have 100,000 jobs in tourism, and I need to move those someplace. And what you're saying is let's just make the whole thing bigger, and so everybody can win on this. So cacao can exist. The satellites, the Mauna Kea, the space kind of exploration thing can exist. The fish, the aquaculture. With a bigger pie, I can see some possibilities here for us. What does our workforce need to be like? Is there some kind of thing that we have to think about our population, our people here? Should we be prepping? Like hurricane season, we prep. We have these 30 days or 14 days, whatever. What can we do as a workforce, do you think, to prep, to be ready for these kind of opportunities that may be coming our way?
One, we have to get the people in Hawaii to have the mentality of embracing change. Uh, it kind of baffles me how there's a lot of people here who don't like change. They enjoy the status quo, and we have to listen to those folks. But we can't let the status quo lovers drive our future. So first thing is embrace change, and then to do that, doing exactly what you're doing in terms of reskilling our workforce to look at our own economic engines in a different way. Like, so going back to agriculture, which brought many of our ancestors to Hawaii in the first place, right? Instead of going to that terrestrial-based agriculture, there, we can grow food in a warehouse, right? We can have a 20-story building devoted to growing agricultural products in there. But that's a different farmer of tomorrow than the farmer who's in the dirt watering vegetables today, right? In the future, it's going to be an automated sprinkler system in a condo-like setting that's going to create the food that you and I eat. So technology is going to be just for efficiency and for safety, lower cost. Technology is going to be the future. So if you're one of those who kind of enjoy just doing things today and hope that you're going to continue and fight progress so you can do it for the next 20 years, you're going to totally be left behind. So that's why I really appreciate your efforts in bringing technology to people who might otherwise not have that opportunity.
Yeah, I like what you say too. Like we need to help people embrace this idea of change. Some people are afraid of change, is what I've heard, but I think it's people are afraid of change that they think is going to be negative. So I mean, if I say I'm going to change your bank account and give you $20 trillion, they're like, no, I'm afraid of change. I think most people are going to be like, oh, great, come on, let's do it. But to talk about opportunities that are going to require some training, training classes or workshops or a couple of months, I think that sometimes is a challenge for us, myself included, to think a little bit further down the line, to look at the change, to look at, I maybe you've seen some of these pictures too before of the people who used to work in the ice box industry or whatever, getting ice for people's ice boxes. My grandparents here in Hawaii used to call the refrigerator an ice box. And I always did too, but it's because I think they actually had ice, I see the pictures of the guys cutting ice out of a frozen lake, not here in Hawaii, and then putting it into an ice box. And that job is no more. And I think some of the jobs that we're looking at now today that people are in shortly will be no more. So I like what you're talking about here.
Yeah. I mean, a good case in point is, how we want to embrace alternative energy. And on the transportation front, I was talking to the gas station association owners, like, what in the world is your future, right? We as a state and as a country are pushing more EVs and embracing slowly hydrogen. You selling gas is not going to be a business model that we need. Why aren't you changing the gas stations of today into the EV charging stations of tomorrow and potentially eventually the fuel cell hydrogen stations of the future? But the gas stations are stuck on their pull the crude out of the ground, refine it, and put it in people's cars. That's a model that in 10 years is going to be dead, and they are resistant to embracing change. And they're gonna feel the pain of that because some other private entity is going to start providing EV charging stations that we're going to need as a community in the future.
Yeah, I just, as you were talking, I'm thinking ostrich, head in the sand kind of stuff. Or when my kids were young, they would close their eyes and say, "Dad, you can't see me." It's not going to matter whether you agree or disagree. There are some things that are going to change, and work as we know it, and then life as we know it is already different, never going to be the same, but it's going to be so much different. I mean, I remember when telephones had the little rotary thing. Obviously you do too, 1985. I remember, when we first got some kind of cordless phone with Wonder Phone or something. And that's in my lifetime. I'm just going to be tripping. I hope I live long enough to see some of these changes technology brings to us. I'm not happy with what COVID-19 has done to the health of the world, but I'm hopeful that there'll be some changes because of the disruption caused by it. They're going to help us to navigate in a transition into this different life that we're going to have to live to be successful. Any thoughts, like last thoughts? I've kept you for a long time on here, and I really appreciate that. But the ideas that you have, I don't always hear from people. I mean, I don't hear vision. And so any last thoughts maybe that you might want to share with me, people who are watching it?
I think as a community, we really need to let natural evolution not be the driver of how Hawaii is different in the future. I'm a believer of re-engineering better outcomes. Too often in Hawaii, we just kind of sit and wait, right? We look at tourism, and the only reason why we're seeing a revival is because a vaccine that Pfizer and Moderna created wherever they're located, right? We didn't take an opportunity to help reinvent tourism, and I could use examples in various other sectors. But we really need to get out of this mindset in Hawaii where we're waiting for somebody else to solve our problems. We need to figure it out ourselves. We have smart people here. I mean, we see like all of our young kids that go to the mainland and don't come back. Hawaii has to stop being the farm system for successful mainland companies. We need to have a reason for your kids, my daughter, to have a reason to stay in Hawaii and not think that the grass is always greener on the mainland. The grass is green here. Just we got to nurture it and grow it.
Love it. I have never heard this idea of Hawaii being a farm club for the mainland, and I call it the continent now, but I just don't, that gets me riled up. Makes me want to get a little bit into the game here. In fact, a few months ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who was telling me, Kaala, you need to be competitive. Talking to me specifically. And then he says, we in Hawaii have to think competitively, which goes against some of even what you brought up earlier, like how we embrace everybody. We don't want to put ourselves forward. There's a lot of aloha, but aloha doesn't mean that we're going to be a doormat. So we can be competitive and still have aloha for people. But the idea of being a farm club, you got me on this, okay? You got me on not wanting to be a farm club.
Yeah, I mean, our greatest export cannot be our kids.
Oh,
we got to keep the kids here.
Oh, jeez. I really, really appreciate your time on this. And let me just say a hui ho to you. And I'm going to try. Is it okay if we come back on maybe in a little while and get some of these new ideas and get some updates and see where everything is?
Certainly. It's always a pleasure talking story with you, Kaala.
I want to get the action. I want to see what kind of actions are going
on.
All
about action, right?
All about the action. That's what I'm going to be leaving with. And the other things that I'm leaving with is for us here, before we sign off on this, to think about what Hawaii could be like, reimagine what it could be like, redesign what Hawaii could be like. And the other thing that I'm taking away from this conversation with Glenn here is this idea that we can't let natural evolution dictate to us what's going to happen. I like the challenge, and I feel like it's like a gauntlet thrown down by Senator Wakai here. And this is an opportunity for us to design, to think, to be proactive in it. And I want to take that. I want to do that. This is our chance to have vision. And again, vision for me is an alternative picture of the future. If you don't have an alternative picture of the future, you are not a leader. And I want to encourage you who are watching this live or watching the replay on this to think about your own personal vision, which would be you leading yourself, basically, and also think about what Hawaii could be. Just imagine. So thank you for joining us on this call. I guess it's not a call. Speaking of how old I am, thank you for joining us this live stream in whatever place that you are. If you have any comments, questions, again, you can pop them into whatever place you're at. And even if it's delayed, we'll still get back to you. I want to remind you that tomorrow we have Teresa Sladek. She's from North Star, fantastic digital literacy organization, nonprofit from Minnesota that is going to help us here in Hawaii to upskill our workforce. That's happening at 11:30 next week. Jason Chang from Queens Hospital. All kinds of fascinating people, all kinds of interesting people. But again, reimagine, think big here. Let's do this, Hawaii. I'm out. Aloha, hui ho, and goodbye.